Hi, everyone. This is the Family Pictures Podcast, and I'm here with Jim Groom.
How you doing?
Oh, and I'm Michael Branson Smith. And, before we get started, Jim, I thought we'd take a moment here, and I think we need to have a conversation. I'd like to talk to you about your testes. If you treat your testicles with love and care, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of them, Jim. But if they're abused, you might just end up one of those poor souls at the Atlanta Genital Institute with ESS. You know what that is, Jim? Enlarged scrotum syndrome, walking around in your pajamas, holding on to your boils. And this is a cautionary tale, Jim. And I want you to just get back to focusing on your future. Go back to school, get that PhD you've always wanted, that you've been working on for 30 years now. And just stop, if you can, stop worrying about getting laid.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. In fact, that's also some of the best and convincing animation I've ever seen in film, because not only did it work on his younger brother, Tommy, but it worked on me, as a young kid when I saw this film.
For Jim, this is what Johnny Dangerously, the 1984 film starring Michael Keaton. We're going back to the well with Michael Keaton here. A really odd movie that somehow slid through as a family picture here. Very loose rules with the podcast because, even though it was directed by Amy Heckerling, the director of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, an all-time favorite movie, which we should find a way to do as a family picture about a brother and sister.
I think we can figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, brother and sister.
That's right. Brad at the pool.
Yeah. And, she went on to do the Look Who's Talking series, as well as probably one of my favorite high school pictures, Clueless, which she also wrote. But this is really an old-fashioned movie. And I say that because, even though it's not only is it a parody of 1930s gangster films and Jimmy Cagney being the wise guy, it's kind of an entourage of comedic talent from the 50s and 60s. It's in the vein of Mel Brooks style comedy, lots of really racy humor, lots of sight gags and just silly, endless jokes, which is, in the end, we're going to say who the family characters are, but ultimately I think this is just going to be a story of a lot of great jokes. It had a lot of TV sensibilities too. The screenwriter and story writers were the two men that had created the TV show Different Strokes, which, that show doesn't last either.
No, exactly. It's a family picture podcast potential if we go TV.
So you had a lot of frequent collaborators with Mel Brooks, including the producer of the film. And then this just entourage of talent. A lot of TV people, a couple including Mary Lou Henner and an early Danny DeVito, who have both just come off the end of the show run of Taxi, a show that was near and dear to my heart. I think it's like that and WKRP in Cincinnati are my two favorite 70s sitcoms, if I were to put them out there.
Two very good ones, too.
And so loosely, how is this a family picture, Jim Groom?
Well, I think there is a family unit, right? And Ma Kelly is the reason why Michael Keaton's character, Johnny Dangerously, or Johnny Kelly,
if you're in the neighborhood, you got to remember it's Johnny Kelly.
Exactly. He gets into crime because his mother just needs, medical procedure after medical procedure that just gets significantly more expensive, from $49.95 this week's special to
you can get your pancreas can be fixed today.
And that's to the gags. Everything is a gag. Every line in this film is a gag, and I loved it on the second watch because I haven't watched this in 40 years.
Me too.
I was just like, oh my God, this film is so funny. And it's it's like airplane gags. They're endless and they come, and it makes almost Airplane look a little bit slow. Right. I was watching his first 5 or 6 minutes and I was like, I've got to actually write down every gag because there's so many, like
it's
50
a bullet
in the
train.
first 5 minutes that I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So it is loosely a family film because Johnny Dangerously is doing this for Ma and doing this for his brother Tommy so that Tommy stays out of a life of crime and becomes ultimately a district attorney.
I think it was more like Tommy was just going to end up a man on the streets, like, hooking. He was just, if he didn't keep his studies going. At the same time, Ma Kelly is, a single mom because, she's raising 2 boys alone in the streets of the Lower East Side, one of the worst summers in centuries.
Worst July in years. Oh, my God.
With the snow. Anyway, because Tommy, just for inspiration, while he's studying his law books at 6 years old, he's got a photo of his father, Killer Kelly, in the electric chair.
and that's what it's like. That's that film. Like, it starts off with a Weird Al Yankovic song, which immediately you're like, what? And it's hysterical. And then it's Michael Keaton, who works now in a dog kennel, an animal kennel. And he's feeding
it's a pet shop.
It's just a pet shop. Okay, there you go. And I couldn't find the words. And immediately he starts like, I made this special for you. And he puts it in and then he walks away and the animal throws it out. And he calls the 2 geese living together in sin, Connie and Mac. Like, it's just out of control. Like, it was like boom, 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 boom. It goes like there's some kid who comes in and tries to steal a puppy. And as he leaves through a theft detector, the original, I guess, ever made, and the lights go off, and he's like, "Come here, kid!" And he's got
because it's 1930s, by the way. That's the thing. It's like this is supposed to be 1930s, New York City, Lower East Side, and
where everyone had to be outside the house for 4 hours and wear a hat to get citizenship.
Yeah. And
it's hysterical.
I mean, and we should say Ma Kelly is played by Maureen Stapleton, who is literally a Triple Crown winner. She has an Oscar, she has an Emmy, and she has a Tony Award. Known more for her character roles, but leading roles in both television and in theater, where she won both of those awards, but she won as a supporting actress. I can't remember the role. It was a film I had never seen. And yeah, it opens up with her like she's of course running the laundry business out of the kitchen. Well, Johnny, we'll get to Johnny in a minute, but Johnny's like always hustling with her, and he goes to punch his mom with his right, but then like she dodges and she then smacks him with his left and says, "You gotta watch out for that.
Gotta watch your left, Ma."
But and he's like, "Happy birthday, Ma," And realize Maureen Stapleton at this moment is 59, and he's like, and he's like, on your 29th birthday. He's like, "Happy birthday." And she goes, "I hope I make it to 30.
Exactly. And she looks particularly old for this role.
Yes.
Like, they made her look like 80. And it's so funny. Like, you're going to make it to 30. And then it's just like, I've been ironing these shirts for a year for this one guy. And they come back to the shirt gag where, Johnny Dangerously, after he's kind of got some money and he kind of joins, which we'll talk about it, points to a room, the second room in this 2-bedroom, 2-room apartment filled with shirts.
Yeah.
I just love
these are like these. I lived in one of these apartments in the Lower East Side, and there are like these railroads. So it literally is, probably, I don't know, 600 square feet, these apartments typically. Ours was one of the railroad types, so it was super narrow, and it was a 2-bedroom where one of the bedrooms my now wife and I shared, and it literally, the queen bed took up the entire room.
Yeah. I lived 2 down there around Alphabet City, and the bathroom was in the kitchen. Like,
the shower. The shower would be. Yeah, we had a friend too. The shower would be in the kitchen, and the toilet would be a closet.
It was my wife coming from Italy was like, "What? Like, we have to actually cook and shit at the same place?" It's like, "Yeah, welcome to New York, lady."
Well, Ma Kelly is like keeping it real too. She's also making beer with noodles on the counter, and I think like her, and let's get to Tommy Kelly first before we finish with Johnny Kelly. So Tommy is just a introduced. And so there is a flashback to start the film. Like their age is, Tommy's like 6 and Johnny is like about, 10, 12. And so Tommy is like at his books, literally reading the law at age 6. But he soon in his life struggles to maintain his focus. I mean, poor Tommy, he's like, he actually has a focus. And this is the era of these type of films. Like, the 80s were infamous for like, I need to go to Mexico to get laid, Tom Cruise, or I need to go
losing it.
Yeah, I need to go across the country for the sure thing.
John Cusack.
John Cusack, thank you. And that's what this era was about, like poor teenage or young adult who can't figure out how to find another human being to have sex with.
This is post Porky's. Like this is like the moment. Like they had to get this in there somehow.
But ultimately, it makes you realize that sense of humor was just based out of a bunch of 50s guys who were horny, who had to like basically, get married to have sex. Like that's the joke. That's the actual joke in this film. And the funny thing is it always struck me when I used to like crawl through Wikipedia pages of, like actors from the 30s and 40s, and they would have like 5 marriages, right? And it's because like that's what it was. It's like, well, if you couldn't live in sin, living in sin was an impossibility ultimately.
Yeah.
And so in order to have sex, you had to get married. Otherwise you were just nothing other than a piece of shit criminal, as Mark Kelly would call them.
Well, and the other piece is, and this goes back to Maureen Stapleton. So there is a moment where, Johnny comes in and says, I'm leaving. Like, I'm leaving law school. I have my girlfriend here.
Yeah.
Tommy, I'm sorry. And says, I'm leaving law school. Here's my girlfriend, soon to be wife, who's like, I'll do whatever he says.
Sally,
and then Maureen Stapleton, Ma Kelly.
Tommy, you have to set this up. Yeah, okay. Tommy sets this up, and it's like Johnny's moments because Johnny's there too, and Johnny's like, "Wait, why do you have to need law school?" Leaves that, and Tommy tries to reveal, to Johnny with a wink, wink, like what he really needs. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely, and so Johnny's like, "Okay, meet me at the club at 10 tomorrow." So Johnny kind of disappears, and then Ma Kelly is like, I know what you want to do. You want to get laid. Boom, 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 boom. And she pulls these off, Maureen Stapleton, like throughout the film. In fact, she's by far the funniest person in the film. She steals the film.
What can't you say in front of Mom?
Nothing, Mom.
I know what you can say. You want to get laid.
Mom!
You want to hump your brains out. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom.
She does. Yeah. There's a scene at Tommy's graduation, right? When he does finally graduate law school, and she's like, "Oh, I want to get a picture of everybody," right? And so she's going through her pocketbook and she pulls out a pork chop, something else, and then a vibrator. What?
A blonde wig.
A blonde wig. That's it. And then a vibrator.
Yeah, exactly. Hold this.
And then finally, she finds the camera, but the camera is not a camera. She actually doesn't want to take a picture. It's a giant flask.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll drink.
Yeah. And Tommy's like, Ma, it's prohibition. Yeah. He's just like, chill out, son.
She comes with an off-color comment, which this film is filled with. But like, yeah, it's truly interesting. Just like I wasn't prepared watching this film for just how much it was like Airplane, because again, you had mentioned this earlier, like this is a film I have misquoted and kind of brought into my everyday life for decades, with the whole Piscopo thing, my mother grabbed me once, or, we could talk about all this, but
we will. Yeah.
It is a film that oddly, not really remembering watching it, I remember me and my friends talking about it and quoting it and sight gagging it for years afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. It had its hold on teenage boys. Right. Yeah. And I think that's, emblematic of these kind of films, and we'll talk about the direction they go in kind of the modern age of the early 2000s and whatnot. But we should get to finally to Johnny Kelly, who's kind of the patriarch now, right, of the family, and he's a slick talking kid, and when we see him at his young age, he's working the streets, selling newspapers, a nice honest job, and he's flinging them and like a bullet. Super accurate. He's got some true NFL quarterback accuracy, and he runs into Vermin, because Vermin's a neighborhood kid too. Because these stories are always about neighborhood kids and family members, and Vermin totally just sucker punches him, right?
Totally.
But Johnny can take a punch. He gets up and he knocks Vermin down, and this takes. Jocko Dundee, the local mob boss, takes a shine to him when he sees this, and he invites him. And this is the other, we want to really push it, is the other family, is the Jocko Dundee mob. And they're really, as it goes for a 1930s gang, there's a lot of familial stuff going on here. Christmas time, there's a lot of presents of wads of cash going out.
Exactly.
Johnny keeps the dental plan going later on.
Exactly. He diversified.
And but Johnny immediately, there's the great scene where we get to finally meet Maroney, right? Roman Maroney. It's so bad.
It's so good.
And it's so good. And we're at Maroney's club, who's the rival gang leader. And, we'll get to Maroney in a second, but this is where Johnny, ends up saving the day as they rob Maroney's place. And that leads to his life of crime. And at first he says no, right? Because he had to say no. But, because he in the beginning, Jocko Dundee made him an offer. What was his offer?
Offer was $50, but didn't tell him what, but it was going to be criminal. And then Johnny says, you know what? I can't do anything criminal. My ma says it will break her heart. And so ultimately he doesn't. As Jocko goes away, though, his bumper sticker says, I'd rather be stealing, which I just like, again, gag after gag.
Yeah, they never miss an opportunity to put in the frame some sort of gag.
It's so good.
Yeah, and meanwhile, this, of course, becomes the exact amount minus 5 cents that Johnny needs to pay for his mother's pancreas issues, which are vague. I mean, there's another issue later in the film that he has to deal with. There's two more that are really, one is like, doctor shows up and it's like, Johnny, sorry, we can't find your mom's thyroid. What? Well, it'll be $999 to find it. And he's like, okay. And he's like, Ma. Doctor's like, your mom's got a blocked salivary gland. What?
Yeah.
That'll be $7,500. Well, it'll be good to see Ma spit again, right?
Exactly. And I love how it just keeps on going up, right?
Yeah. But never fail to return to a joke, right?
And then so he goes back to see Ma when he finds this out, and he walks up this endless walk up to his thing. And it's like,
those are also real.
Exactly. And you have two people with paper bags, huffing on the stairwell because they can't make it up. It's just like that. Yeah. Like there's just these gags, very Mel Brooks. There's gags always in the background everywhere. It's just, watching it again, I couldn't stop laughing at pretty much everything. Yeah.
And so Johnny Kelly is now officially part of a life of crime, and he's working for Jocko, the Dundee crime family here. And Dundee, we should talk briefly about Dundee as well. Peter Boyle, who's also from this family of Mel Brooks characters. He's literally the monster in Young Frankenstein, which is, a wonderful, probably my favorite Mel Brooks movie, besides that and Blazing Saddles, or maybe it's History of the World.
History of the World Part 1 would be
I think it's History of the World, actually. Yeah. And anyway, but he's probably best known as Everyone Loves Raymond's. I think he's the uncle. It's a show I actually never watched, but I know that's what he's best known for.
I know him for Taxi Driver. He's great in Taxi Driver.
Oh, that's right, too. My goodness. And so we're getting introduced to the mob family. Peter Boyle, he's giving Johnny the message. It's like, you got to get rid of Maroney. But we should introduce Maroney. Maroney is the mobster with a mouth.
Yeah. Southern Italian, I'm assuming, mobster, Roman Maroney. And you hear Maroney, and I guess what they're doing is, they're using a comic, gimmick to have him mispronounce curse words so that they can get away with this, terrible language.
But endless cursing.
Yeah. And it's just hysterical. So when they first come, he hears Dundee's outside and he's like, "What's that bastage want?" So immediately you start with the bastiges. And then he's like, they
so
say something.
endless.
He's like, "It's a free country, ice hole."
Ice hole.
Beautiful. You got your ice hole.
Fargin bastiges. I take your boils, I put them in a sling.
It's just, this is
I
something.
take your arm and I will shove it up your ice hole.
You Fargin sneaky bastard. I'm gonna take you to work. I'm gonna nail it to the wall. I'm gonna crush your boils in a meat grinder. I'm gonna cut off your arms. I'm gonna shove them up your asshole.
It's endless. And so, he does that. And then this is a great scene where, Johnny gets after the scene gets his terminology, he gets his name officially of Dangerously. But he uses these he's like an Olympic, gymnast. He goes around the whole thing, kicking everybody, fighting everyone, because Dundee gets shot. And then, they roll teeth instead of dice because he's kicking people's teeth out. It's just a absolutely off the wall scene. And it's after that Dick Buckus, of all people, who's the driver for Dundee, says, "You're really living dangerously, kid." And Dundee says, "What's your name?" And he's like, Johnny Dangerously, right? And then,
Right. And Dick Buckus is one of like a half a dozen or so cameos that are also in the vein of Mel Brooks. And we could just quickly go through a lot of them because they're kind of Dom DeLuise shows up as the Pope. Johnny Dangerously is now a mobster, and he returns to the family, and everybody knows them. They're literally selling "I Love Johnny" t-shirts on the streets, right? "I Heart Johnny" t-shirts. And, there's someone who's like, "Hey, Johnny. Hi, Johnny Dangerously." And he's like, whoa, careful, people. Everybody, when I come home to the neighborhood, who am I? You're Johnny Kelly, good man. But you're not the well-known gangster Johnny Dangerously. Then Dom DeLuise pops in as the Pope just to emphasize this.
Which is great. I love Dom DeLuise.
And Dom DeLuise, this is yet another. He was a variety show comedian. He did the Cannonball Run movies with Burt Reynolds. Like, these are and they're all just like, this is that era of those sight gags. And then you also have things like Alan Hale, literally the skipper, who's the desk sergeant during the chase scenes
from Gilligan's Island. Absolutely, it's so good.
Ray Walston, one of my favorites, my favorite Martian actor from the '60s, but then becomes Mr. Hand and
Mr. Hand.
Yeah,
it's Fast so Times good. Which is Eckerling, going back to Fast Times at Ridgemont High and bringing in some of those actors.
And that's another one you can't help but just keep going back to the joke. He's like a newsstand sell, and he starts as blind. And the joke that they keep doing is that the truck delivering the papers for him to sell tosses it up the truck, hits him in the head, knocks him down, and he gets up and he's like, "I can see."
Exactly.
and then it happens. It hits him again like 5 million scenes later, and he's like, "I can still see, but I'm deaf."
Exactly. and then hits him again.
And then hits him again, and he's like, "I can see, I can hear, but who am I?"
Exactly. Just stupid.
It's just so stupid, really stupid, awesome. And, from the opening, we even have Neil Israel, who's Dr. Zillman, who wasn't a TV actor. He was actually more of a writer and producer. And he wrote Real Genius and Police Academy. And probably my favorite cameo, because it's just so stupid, is Bob Eubanks pops up as the red carpet interview for one of the kind of the finale scene of the movie. And they're watching the Roaring 20s, which is really the main inspiration of this film. I meant to watch it. I downloaded it. I didn't get an opportunity to watch it beforehand, which is a James Cagney film. And so James Cagney is the inspiration, but Bob Eubanks is doing it. And this is a man that I know that people that are younger don't know, but he was the person you looked for every time you got to stay home sick or there was a holiday, because it was game show time, because he made 2,195 episodes of the Newlywed Game. That's insane. That's an insane amount of television.
And I think the Newlyweds actually has still some kind of life. Like it's one of those reality television kind of make-off shows that still kind of like people would relate to, but probably can't relate to just how omnipresent Bob Eubanks was.
I mean, you could argue that, the Newlywed Game is the progenitor of shows like The Bachelor, obviously.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes, 100%.
But it was a tamer time. Even though you could say really racist slurs, you couldn't say. You had to say making whoopee.
Yeah, whoopee. That was the big thing. And then whoopee, by definition, kind of became a bad word because you knew exactly what it meant. It was It's so funny.
And somehow, they proceed to get through the day. Oh my gosh, I'm kind of like, we're just in a milieu of jokes, and I don't even know what the point of this in terms of a family podcast is. It's so funny. Okay, well, we should introduce the rest of them.
But I'm glad we watched it.
So we should talk more, I guess, a little bit more about the Mob family, because we finally get introduced to Vermin as an adult.
Yeah.
Tell us about him.
We get introduced to Vermin as an adult, who is Joe Piscopo.
Correct.
And Joe Piscopo is coming off, kind of ending his career at Saturday Night Live, where him and Eddie Murphy
that's true. Yeah.
really were kind of, they were Saturday Night Live for a good couple of years. And so Joe Piscopo, as a kid in 84, him and Eddie Murphy would be like the faces of comedy. Right.
Oh, and his like Frank Sinatra kind of parodies were impersonations were so great.
And Pokey to Eddie Murphy's Gumby. And obviously Eddie Murphy was next level with Delirious.
Yeah, sure.
But Joe Piscopo was like, wow. So Joe Piscopo's first real Hollywood role is this one, and he plays Danny Vermin. And Danny Vermin has some great lines in this. So it's kind of like silly. He's playing like this mobster, but like every time, like Johnny will grab him, and he's like, "My mother grabbed me once." And
this is yet another joke they returned to like 4 times.
You shouldn't hang me on a hook. My father hung me on a hook once.
Come on, boys, I'm buying. Now you're talking.
And this is one we would misquote. My mother hung me on a hook.
No, it's my father.
My father hung me on a hook. So I would just mix them all up. It didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Like, it was Joe Piscopo who oftentimes we would quote. And I would quote this around the house, as I do with many films. And my kids are like, what? What are you quoting? And they're like, you quote the most obscure, random lines. Like, I'll be like, get him a body bag, or then you don't get no Coke. And they're like, what is that from?
Yeah.
I love it.
And his first line is literally, I fulfilled a lot of people's predictions about me. I became a real scumbag.
and he also plays him looks like him.
I know, and he has the sight gag, and there's lots of sight gags, and this is like he has a revolver that has like a barrel that's literally like 9 inches long. It's like ginormous, and they're commenting it's an .88 Magnum, and he goes, "It shoots through schools."
That's the most random thing. And then later on he says, armor, it will shoot through armor. And then it will shoot through the person. And then it will shoot through walls. And it's like, and so we used to say, it's an .88 Magnum. It shoots through walls. Getting it completely wrong. But then again, the spirit of Joe Piscopo talking about his .88 Magnum was everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really... Vermin becomes this great character because like he's ultimately the foil for Johnny across the rest of the film, right? I mean, this film is very loose on plot for the most part, because Tommy does graduate. He almost gets laid right in the in the courthouse where he's getting married. But it's at the same time, this is when finally, because Tommy has lived this sheltered life, not only has he been abstaining for, all the way into his 30s, he also doesn't know that Johnny is Johnny Dangerously. He still thinks of him as Johnny Kelly. And it's in the moment when he's with his new bride, and they've found a janitor's closet in City Hall to get the deed finally done, that he overhears Vermin, who has walked into City Hall and seen Johnny with Tommy, and realizes that they're actually siblings. And he reveals that, and then Tommy finds out, and he runs out. And his wife's like, "What the hell? That's it?"
Yeah. And then a janitor walks in, and who's singing like a Christ song, like a gospel song, and then walks in and is
my
like,
goodness.
"Hallelujah!" I mean, again, they just don't. They never
don't
give
stop.
up. They don't stop. But like, there's the whole premise is kind of like Johnny is telling this kid who came into his store to steal his life story. In order to kind of, and so there are moments where they leave the story and come back to Johnny with the kid, and when they come back, Johnny's sitting there with a pricing gun, with a pricing gun, putting them on the puppies, the pricing, like just stupid things like that. Or,
that's one of my favorite sight gags, actually.
I love that. Or when he dusts off the cat before he gives it to him, and then there's like scenes where, Johnny's waiting to hear from the doctor about one of the many maladies that his mom has, which keeps him in the life of crime. And he comes down, but while the doctor's up with his mother, he's in the kind of foyer of his hotel breakdancing. So he starts doing a 30s dance, but then he goes into a full-on breakdancing, and his girlfriend's like, "Wow, Johnny, I've never seen anything like that." Like those, like, and there's another scene where he's basically talking to his friends, and he's like, and if talking to his gang, Johnny, because he's taken over because his his mentor has retired because
Dundee,
because
he almost lost his job.
Bathroom.
They blew him up in his bathroom, and he walks out with the hand plunger from an old toilet, and he's like, "Oh my God, Freddie!" He thinks it's his dick, and he starts. He's like, "Thank God, Freddie, you're still there." He has named his penis, which is awesome.
And Frankie Carbone, who's from Goodfellas. Who's the one? Frankie Carbone.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one who plants the bomb. I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, that's a little cameo, too. Yeah.
But so he comes and he's talking to them about how good they have it. And then he says, like, and if we don't work harder, more efficiently, the Japanese are going to take our jobs. I was like, what? How great was that? Like,
it's just ridiculous.
It's just nonstop. It's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the nonstop gags.
Yeah, well, and so we do learn. So Tommy becomes the DA, right? He's married, and he becomes the DA. And he just and this is a big shock. So back at when he graduates law school, right before he gets married, Johnny tries to set him up with a nice corporate law firm, give him some slick money. And he's like, "No way, man. I want to protect people from crime." And Johnny's just like, again, this is very light. Oh no, John, it's not like Michael Keaton is like really devastated here. So he becomes the DA. And so again, his own mob family doesn't know, that his Tommy Kelly's his brother. And so they try to get him to play ball. And that literally becomes this scene with Danny DeVito, right? So Danny DeVito pops in, who's also hot off a Taxi. He's not Danny DeVito like Ruthless People. Like Danny DeVito, Ruthless People, I think of as like that's his like Star Rocket film. He's done. He was.
What happened to Mom? Like who threw Mom off the train?
Yeah. That's after Ruthless People, right? And he's done Romancing the Stone, a smaller part with Michael Douglas, but it's really Ruthless People where he takes off. But in here, he's still just making his way, and he plays the crooked DA who tries to get Tommy to play ball, and it's literally a game show, right?
So good.
and it's like he's showing him all the prizes he'll get. And Tommy at first is like really excited, like, wow, this is my job. I'm going to get all this, like an oven and stuff like that. And then he finally shows him the beautiful showgirl. And he's like, wait a minute here. Yeah. I'm not allowed to do that. So it falls apart. And in the meantime, we're also learning a bit more about Johnny's life as a crime boss. And probably one of my favorite things is he's fell in love with a cabaret singer played by Mary Lou Henner, another Taxi all-star, as Lil Sheridan. And they're making a nice little home together in the apartment that's where all of the big crime bosses all over the history of New York are all living together.
Exactly. And, to the point where Al Capone's wife comes to Johnny's door asking for like, I'm all out of milk, Johnny, or eggs.
No, he's like, can you spare a cup of bullets?
There you go, a cup of bullets. I missed that. And Johnny's, I missed at least half.
And Johnny's like, sorry. And she's like, man, Al's going to be really pissed.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, obviously these things are all super silly. And then finally, like, Tommy confronts Johnny, right? Like, because again, we've said Vermin spills the beans, and Tommy confronts Johnny and is like, "How could you?" And Johnny says, "I'm gonna quit. I'll quit. I'm gonna give up my life of crime for you, Tommy. I'm gonna go legit." And Tommy believes him, and he like tackles him, and he's like, "For me, really, Johnny? Yeah. Gee whiz!" And he's like starts humping him on the courthouse, and then the passerbys again. Why not have another joke?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Oh, it's exactly. And there's so many. There's like you talked about cameos. I don't remember his name. Maybe Ron Savage or something. He's the mailman from Better Off Dead.
Okay.
He's in there. He's the one who brings
right. Yeah.
The robot of Maroney who tries to shoot up everybody. There's also Ron Carney, who's from My Anxiety, who's the bellhop who always tries to take money. Like, your mom, how's she doing? She's such a sweet woman and he has to give her money. Like, it's just, I mean, I just love it. There's the whole point when he meets Mary Lou Henner and he's like, Johnny, how do you do it with all these women? And he's like, mutual respect. Like, it's just, and then she's like, did you know your last name's an adverb? Like, again, it's like, boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I don't even know. Like,
ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom,
ba-boom. Does the word smitten mean anything to anyone?
And so Vermin basically, in this kind of mob family, Johnny can walk in and say, "Hey guys, I'm going legit. I'm leaving the family." And Vermin's like, "No, you're not. I'm taking over." And Johnny's like, "No, you're not." And then we get another like, did that to me once joke, I think, if I recall. So and Johnny gets set up by Vermin, right? He's taken his papers, whatever those may be, to the commissioner to give himself up for his life of crime. And the commissioner's dead, and Vermin's killed him, and they set him up for take the fall. And so, which leads to probably the most racist bit from the entire film, when Vermin passes by the cleaning woman and she is just spewing the N-word. Like, it's just
everything
stuff that you could never do right now.
Slurs upon slurs. And they're all kind of together, so you can't really hear them clearly, but they're there.
Yeah, and if you put the subtitles on, oh my.
Yeah, there you go.
And so yet another opportunity, like they set her up to be the one that finds Johnny, who they've knocked unconscious, and she's like, they're like, how much will you do this for me? And he's like, you willing to do a job? That's Vermin's first question to the cleaning woman. And she's like, and he happens to be with his henchman, Vermin. And he's like, what do you? She's like, what do you want? You want me to take you one at a time or two at once?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry,
it's like
just you or both of you, both at once.
One at a time or both at once. But they do convince her to do it for $17,000, which of course Vermin has right then and there. And this leads to Johnny going to jail. I mean, it's kind of like a yada, yada, yada at this point.
I mean, I don't know why you insist on the plot.
I mean, we got to anchor this podcast to something.
I mean, if we're trying to like let Wishy should say is like when Vermin drives up to the I'm all about the jokes. Vermin drives up to the
I'm trying to give you more prompts
City
for
Hall,
jokes.
right?
Just to remind
and he's like, it's handicap spot. His friend says, or it's a handicap spot. I'm handicapped. I'm psychotic.
And then to put an emphasis, he takes out his handicap sign, which shows like an illustration of a person like with a crazy face.
Oh my God.
But it's blue and in white.
Or even when Mom Kelly, says after they get married, I want to share something with you to his, Johnny's. I go to
Mary Lou.
ways.
No, yeah, this is to Mary Lou Hellish, a little Sharon. I feel like you're part of the family now.
Yeah.
I want to share something. I go both ways.
Ma Kelly, again, she is just out of control. I mean, she is so funny. There's the picture flash gag with the whole reporters when they manhandle the woman to take her out of the. I mean, the press stop at nothing. The whole final one is when Ma Kelly actually gets Joe Piscopo and she knees him in the balls.
Oh,
and
right.
Joe Piscopo says, my sister kicked me in the balls once.
And even when, so to escape jail, I'm back to the plot here. I'm a purist here.
Okay, but when Johnny goes into jail, what is Johnny wearing? When he takes the warden through jail, do you remember?
Oh, what his jailhouse outfit is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's got this he's wearing a classic black and white stripes, but it's like custom, right?
Custom?
And it's this, and it's like and he's got a cravat.
He's got the European cravat on. It's the best.
And he's passing out dollar bills and shaking hands as he walks through jail.
Yeah, and he says, "Go get them some." He has them get them some particular food that makes no sense. But there's the time when Mary Lou Henner or I forget
Little
her name.
Sheridan.
Yep, she comes in to see him, and you see Johnny pass all the people in the
my God,
thing. And one of them is this new wave kid with his hair multicolored, and the mother said he has no male role model.
He's like a punk, yeah.
I loved it.
Come on, Jim. We got to get there.
When the mother, when Maureen Stapleton tries to figure out Ma Kelly, how are we going to break him? She learns that the other cleaning lady actually was the alibi that Joe Piscopo paid for. And so she goes to her and she says, we have a lot in common. We both go to scrub floors. We both are swell lookers. And we're both not Chinese.
It's so bad. And so this is how they prove his innocence, but that doesn't matter. And frankly, the rest of the plot really doesn't matter. Johnny ends up getting out of jail through a combination of tactics of inviting himself to get electrocuted in the chair that night, but building a Tommy gun as he's walking with his priest, who's doing, the priest is the things he's saying, he's praying, and he's saying things like summa cum laude, magna cum laude, the radius still loudy, Magna Carta, Master Charger. It's just endless.
On the bus, they missed the bus, they all missed the bus, we missed the bus. So now the final scene, is when they're going to set him free, is in the theater, right?
Right. Yeah, he's escaped. He's had to escape, and this is where the skipper is announcing his location live as he's driving in his Model Ford, his 1930s his Model T Ford, and they're literally pulling shelf paper and disguising the car as they're driving it. And it has duckies and bunnies and they're dressed as nuns. It's endless. Anyway, so this is because basically they've discovered Mary Lou Henner, gosh, I'm forgetting it now. Anyway, they've discovered that Vermin's going to assassinate Tommy, right?
That's right.
And so that's why he's escaped, and that's why they're on the way to the movie, and it's going to be at the movie, the Savoy. And so Johnny has to get there in time.
That's right. And so Johnny does, and they race, like you said, in the car, which they try and camouflage, but it doesn't work. And Alan Hale keeps on telling everybody what it is, which is great. And then Grandma Kelly's already there. And Grandma Kelly, like any good moviegoer, goes up and orders some popcorn, some milk duds, and whitefish. And so they have this picture of like a whole assortment of like fish.
Like pickled whitefish, like classic pickled white, like the whole fish that's already cooked.
So good.
Well, it's pickled. Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for those gags. I agree. A sucker.
I mean, I'm 100% surprised at how, and I think it should come to like what this kind of form of comedy I feel is an inspiration to is like the modern version, the 2000 version of this stuff.
It's worth saying, because I know where you're going, but it's worth saying like this film was pretty much discounted as sophomoric humor, not very good, a little bit too trashy. Despite all the kind of talent, it was pretty much written off, and it was a box office failure. It's a bust. But I think, to your point, there's a legacy there. No, Michael?
Yeah, like this becomes kind of the grandchild that inspires, our generations, like literally as filmmakers, age-wise, right? The racy comedies like the Farrelly Brothers. Like there's something about Mary and Dumb and Dumber. So there's something about Mary and the semen on the that Ben Stiller loses right before his date and ends up on his ear or him like catching his scrotum in his zipper right on the night before the prom. Like this kind of ridiculous kind of gross out humor, but it's just as racy and a similar. They've grown up a bit and they're more focused on, to a certain extent, more plot, but not really. It's still like sight gag after sight gag, and like Dumb and Dumber is absolutely that.
Kingpin.
Yeah. Oh, Kingpin's very similar. And then also Todd Phillips with like the Hangover and Old School, these kind of films where like just sophomoric men just behaving badly, but getting away with it at the same time.
I mean, Step Brothers is literally like the kids from that era as 40-year-olds in their parents' house. Like, that's it. It's like they're there with the same sight gags. It's amazing.
Yeah. And it would be fun to look back, and I'm sure it's as much of ultimately Mel Brooks, because this is all in the vein of Mel Brooks ultimately as well. Like this is an artifact of Mel Brooks's humor, and so I think that's really that's the real like family. If there's any family of this truly not family picture, is the family of comedic history here, like the Mel Brooks family that leads into the next generation and how they take these like really, fun, silly visual gags and then just take them to a new level, right? I mean, who doesn't want a neighborhood woman just stepping out of her window to go talk to Johnny by going down the gutter as a fire pole? Because like, why not just add that? Like that it takes like 5 extra seconds to add that as a visual joke.
Here's a good Mel Brooks joke. So I grew up in Long Island. I don't know if I've ever said this on that podcast. And I grew up in a town where, one of my best friends was a Jewish girl I went to elementary school with. And her dad was a really funny older Jewish guy, right? And like we would talk and we watched Mel Brooks, and he was like, "Mel Brooks, I went to high school with that guy. He used to pick his nose in the corner of the thing the whole time." Like he would be talking shit about Mel Brooks to us while we were watching like, History of the World or whatever. And I thought it was so funny. Like he's like, "I knew that guy. He was a nose picker."
Yeah. But actually, I just remembered. I didn't meet Mel Brooks, but I saw Mel Brooks once in the early 2000s.
Was he picking his nose?
He was not picking his nose. I was with my wife, and we were visiting my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law had a spicy personality like Ma Kelly to a certain extent. And my Amanda and I were cooking dinner, and Maggie was upset about something, and it was like 7:00, but it's the middle of the summer, almost 8 p.m., and she's mowing the lawn angry mowing the lawn to get out her frustrations at 7:00 at night. And so we're just cooking, and suddenly we hear this, fuck. And she had angry lawn mowed that she picked up the mower from the back and kicked a rock right into her shin. And suddenly now she's bleeding like nasty. And so we're like, and we're mad because we knew she was doing this mad, and we were mad at her even though she's bleeding profusely. So we like wrap up our ravioli, take it in the car because we're starving, and we have to drive to the emergency room. And so we're in the emergency room, and I am very queasy, so I could not hang out in the room. So Amanda and Maggie are in the room, and I'm taking a walk. And as I walk out of the emergency room, I see Mel Brooks and Vanessa Redgrave together, like literally just standing there in front of my face, and they're like all smiles, and I was like, holy fucking shit. Exactly, and right? I walk back in and I see Maggie and Amanda. I'm like, I just saw Mel Brooks and Mrs. Robinson. I was like, do you guys? And so, I mean,
that's awesome.
I mean, Mel Brooks he's just incredible. I mean, I think those films were some of my favorite films at the time. And yes, I mean, I think Johnny Dangerously is much an artifact of this. And I'm so glad that Michael Keaton got to play a role in that style of comedy, because he doesn't, I mean, you know, Mr. Mom had just happened, and there's a few sight gags in there, but that movie has a lot more soul to it and you know, a real story. And so it doesn't need to lean on this ridiculousness. But this movie is like nonstop ridiculousness. And Michael Keaton is so good at, though, obviously, you know, Maureen Stapleton, as I agree, is the absolute standout.
Yeah, she is. And that's what I realized on the second time around. But, you know, this movie really does, for me, in terms of family pictures or growing up, puts me in the situation of, we're deep into the era of MTV. So you'll see the Al Yankovic thing on this film, but his kind of MTV video will also be something you're watching. So you associate. But like, this is one of the films like in 84, 85, you'll rent, you'll watch it with your friends in front of someone's basement, you know, for an afternoon, and then you'll go out and you'll joke about it. And that will be the joke of the night. And you'll kind of, right. And it was the idea that media has come to the home. And this was part of our social life, was watching these films, was really kind of, and then going amongst your friends and like communicating and creating these kind of localized memes.
Right. You bastage, Kim Groom.
Exactly.
Everybody was a bastage.
Exactly. Like,
you all a bunch of bastages. What a bunch of bastages.
It was just, so that was really, for me, like, this film reminds me of that kind of social network that we lived in the 80s. And so much of it was mediated by TV and film. And I love that. You know, obviously I'm still living in that.
Yeah, right behind it. I see it all.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps us up for this family picture. As loosely, we'll try to maybe come back to form here. And no, I don't know. But I really, we don't need to. I loved revisiting this film. It'd been a really, really long time, and it was so much fun to talk to you about it.
Hey, bastage. Look, I still give good laundry. Is that what she says? What does she say? She says something like that. She says, he's trying to say, Ma, you don't need this. I still give good laundry, or something to that effect. Oh, my God.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.